Hey, welcome to Strange Coordinates, the show where we use brands as roadmaps to arrive at surprising places. I'm Robert Baylog.
And I'm Topher Burns. Robert and I founded an advertising agency called Territorial. We help brands find their place in the world, and we do that by exploring how history, culture, and desire bounce off one another to reveal really interesting insights about what's cool about being human.
Yeah, that's kind of how we get our fun. Basically, you guys know how this works. Every episode, one of us gives the other person a brand to go explore, and that person has to trek off into the wilderness, find something really interesting and juicy to bring back to the conversation, and tell us a story that they found most compelling. That story could be fun. It most likely will involve a cult if it's Topher. And it's really about using brands as compass points to discover more about the world around us.
And the brand we are going to be pursuing today, I assigned to Robert, is Crayola.
Crayola.
We had some downers, some like heavier
downers.
stuff. And it was like time to spend a little bit of time in the sunshine.
I just want to put this out there. For those of you who are expecting that at some point this story about Crayola is going to veer into some kind of horror show where I reveal that they use, captive baby orangutan tears to make their pigments, or like, or that's just a front for some super tedious cult. That's not this show. That's not today.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We could use with a little levity in times like these.
Yeah. I mean, Topher, I don't want to disappoint our loyal listener, but we're not even going to touch on any sexual paradigms of any kind.
There's no sex, no murder, no
sex,
conspiracy.
No murder. Yeah, there's no Nordic jock waiting in the wings here. And I know. Because like you said, it's been a trying time, both kind of for the storytelling here at Strange Coordinates, but also at the world at large.
People deserve a little break.
Yeah. I mean, our nerve endings are kind of like spaghetti squash at this point. It's just a mess there. So nobody needs any more stress. So we're not doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thrilled. I'm, I had no agenda. I didn't have, sometimes we pick brands and we're like, oh, I really hope you look into blah, 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 or whatever. This one, I didn't have any clue where you were going to go. So this journey will be totally new for me.
I do say I think we're good at not leading the witness too much. I would say that, we may have an agenda, like, picking a thing that I just really want to know about, but I'm never like, I hope Topher finds out that, so-and-so, the founder was like a, secret murderer or something like that. Right. I feel like we're pretty good about preserving the integrity of the podcast. So I'm happy for us for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we also chose sartorially different approaches to today. Topher is obviously in full color regalia, which is great.
Yeah. Just want to, live in the brightness of the subject matter.
I'm just trying not to steal the shine from the brand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to just recede a little bit here.
Very respectful.
Thank you. All right. So today's episode, I'm going to borrow a little thing that we do from our Stranger Coordinates approach, which is we're going to have a theme. Okay. So today's episode, the theme of today's episode is just one thing, one simple thing, and it's goodness. Can you get on board with that, Topher?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. And like, honestly, when I was doing my research on Crayola, the story really yielded like goodness after goodness after goodness at nearly every turn. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, and both literal and sort of emotional and figurative. So what if we just start with the basics? Let's get the basics out of the way.
Okay.
I think we kind of need to establish first and foremost that Crayola, as great as they are, did not invent the crayon. I'm not sure if that's news to you.
I hadn't considered it.
Okay. I think I always thought that they invented it. But actually, what we know as crayons today, crayons are basically a mix of pigment and wax. It's kind of been, that basic idea has been around for tens of thousands of years. So if you think about the cave paintings in Lascaux, those are made with essentially a primitive crayon. It's a pigment in animal fat. So you basically have a pigment suspended in a base. You have things like pastels are related to crayons. Chalks are related to crayons. In fact, the crayon is the French word for pencil, which is derived from the Latin word for chalk. So they're all sort of tied together. We've had these for a long time. Artists have been using things that look like crayons for centuries. But the creation of Crayola in particular, like sort of what we know as a Crayola crayon, is one of those moments that was kind of steeped in goodness that I kept on coming across. Yeah. So one of the inventors of Crayola, the founders of the company, was married to a school teacher. And one day she said to her husband, she said, hey, listen, the kids are having all these breathing problems because we're just using so much chalk and there's chalk dust everywhere.
Yeah.
The kids are getting asthmatic and their sort of art supplies are really damaging their ability to learn. And so this gentleman just happened to own an industrial pigments company. And he had this at his disposal. So first he set off to make chalk, dustless chalk, which was hugely successful. And then he pivoted that into making safe and affordable art supplies for kids, which included paraffin wax crayons that have pigment. And so it wasn't just about putting things in kids' one-room schoolhouse.
Not as Ingalls Wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well,
was this in America? Yeah. Am I jumping ahead?
Yeah. This was a company founded in I think Massachusetts. No, I'm sorry, upstate New York.
I think there's something about maybe because you mentioned the cave paintings in Lascaux, and then you mentioned the French word crayon, and I thought for sure we were going to be in I thought Crayola would be like a French company even.
You would think that. It's actually derived again from French words. So cray is the chalk root, and ola is actually refers to oil, or so fatty. So which is and this incredibly ingenious wife, she came up with it. So she's basically responsible for all this stuff. Did an amazing.
I just thought of our hashtag for this show.
Oh yeah, what's that?
That shit cray.
Oh God. I always say jokingly to Whitney, I'm like, that's cray, like you always say. And she's like, I never say that. I'm like, you always say that. But it's worth stopping here though, for a second on this notion of art supplies. Because we take the idea as children of the 70s and 80s that early age school kids are creating art. We take that as a given, right? But that really wasn't always the case. And in fact, this is one of those instances where a brand or a product kind of really benefited from the emergence of another cultural movement. And in this case, that movement is the kindergarten movement in the United States.
Oh.
So your spidey senses were correct. We are going to go to Europe.
Okay.
And to explore this idea of kindergarten and these new changes in education, we actually need to go back to the 1760s and a Swiss philosopher you may have heard of named Jean-Jacques Rousseau. All right. So, Topher, you're a graduate of American University.
Yeah.
What do you recall learning about Rousseau from your Intro to Western Philosophy or some such class you took at the fine institution of American University? Anything in particular?
I didn't take it. I wasn't much of a philosophy guy.
That's actually legitimately surprising to me because
I have never really enjoyed philosophy personally.
Yeah, I mean, I have a surface understanding of it as an English.
I like religion and I like psychology, but there's something about the nature of philosophy that's like, we can't prove any of this. But we're gonna take it super seriously, and we're gonna say it's proven. You know,
yeah. But I mean, you just put religion forth as a
but religion's you can feel it, and it's cultural, and you know what I mean. I think it's just so much more grounded and stuff. Weirdly, I feel like philosophy is just it just feels like, I don't know. I'm not high enough for this.
I got you. Well, we won't go too deep into it. I'm gonna keep us on the surface. Basically, Rousseau's thing was, like a lot of philosophers at the time, he had an opinion about the human state of nature. So what is in a state of nature? What are human beings? And Rousseau's position was that human beings are inherently good and are corrupted by society. You compare that to people like Hobbes or Locke, who said that the humans.
Society is the thing that makes humans be good.
Yeah, that humans are inherently wicked and that they need to be saved by a kind of central authority.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like core to a lot of the things that Rousseau believed. He wrote a book called The Social Contract, which you've probably heard of, which had a massive impact on political thought in the Western world. It influenced the French Revolution. It tangentially influenced the founding fathers. And so, this interest in the state of nature led him to develop some rather revolutionary theories on education. At the time, education, especially for young children, was seen as, again, a curb on their inherent vice and wickedness.
Yeah.
And Rousseau was having none of that. He wrote this book in 1762 called Emile. You may have heard of the Emile.
No.
Well, the basic premise of the book, again, is that children are by nature good, and that the role of education is to not curb this natural disposition, but to nurture it. And I love, one of my favorite things is great first sentences of books. I don't know. So like, Anna Karenina, and I'm going to butcher it, but Anna Karenina is all happy families are happy in the same way. All unhappy families are unhappy in their own unique ways.
Can I pause? I was
Please.
considering that exact sentence on a bike ride recently, and I thought, that's really only something that a very sad person would think. Only an unhappy person would consider that like everybody's happy in the same way. I think
Right.
because a happy
Russian.
person is like, a happy person's like, oh yeah, I feel like I know like all kinds of different happy families. They're all happy in different ways. But like a sad person's like, happiness is all the same.
Yeah.
And the only texture I know is like dour dysfunction.
I mean, I don't know the exact chronology here, but Tolstoy had, I'm just going to say he had maybe just finished writing War and Peace, which, he could have killed himself under the weight of that novel alone. And then he set out to write another ponderously long novel. So maybe he's not the best authority on happiness.
Good line, though.
Good line.
Good starting
Great
line.
Okay, but the opening of Emile is, everything is good as it leaves the hands of the author of things. Everything degenerates in the hands of man. Which is kind of like...
May I ask you,
Yes.
Sell that to me. Give me, don't, I feel like you hid your light under a bushel.
Oh, you're right.
Like,
Okay.
Give me a little salesmanship on that one.
Everything is good as it leaves the hands of the author of things. Everything degenerates in the hands of man.
There's a lot in there.
And it's a great opener. I mean, like, that kills. That absolutely kills. So that's the idea of a goodness right there, right? So we come back to this notion of goodness. He's positing that, like, we want to base education on the understanding that the child is good, and we are trying to bring that goodness to become a good citizen, to become a good person, to become a good man, a good husband. As you can imagine, we want to just kind of ignore the back half of the book, which was very misogynistic as it started to kind of delve into.
It was either going to be that or racism.
Yeah.
Like it was we were going to delve into phrenology, or we were going to.
So chapters 1 through 4, just killing it. But chapter 5, when he talks about the education of Sophie, not so great.
Oh no.
Yeah. So,
but
Rousseau's philosophy, nonetheless, was massively influential in Europe, and particularly on a German educator whose name was Friedrich Froebel. Sounds like Gene Wilder in Young Frankenstein when he calls himself Friedrich Frankenstein. Friedrich Froebel.
I also picture Friedrich Froebel being like one of the looser Muppets. Like some of the Muppets are kind of taut, but then some of them are kind of baggy. Like there's kind of like more flappy sort of furriness. It's like that.
Oh, I'm loving this morphology of Muppets. This is amazing. This morphology of Muppets.
Yeah.
Well, Friedrich created kindergarten. He is the person who came up with the idea of kindergarten.
I've always loved the child garden,
right?
Is like the cutest little phrase.
It's
like
so
it's just,
cute.
Yeah, it's really great.
He invented the kindergarten in 1837. And kindergarten is based on some core concepts. One is that teachers should use music and nature study and stories and play to teach children. So that was, like, massively new idea. that crafts and manipulatives like blocks are really important learning devices, and that kids acquire cognitive skills and social skills by kind of leaning into the natural curiosity. So kindergarten
Hmm.
was this sort of revolutionary idea. The idea of kindergarten then came to the United States in like the 1850s. And by around the turn of the century, you kind of had most school districts in the country, turn of the century in from 1900, basically. You had most school districts in the country had a publicly funded kindergarten of some kind. So that's a lot of kids in need of a lot of art supplies. Yeah,
Ah.
a lot of kids in need of a lot of art supplies. And the Crayola people, and they were at the time, the company was known as Binney and Smith, believed that this actual creative curriculum was going to be really key to the future of the country. They thought that the problem solving that kids learn through creative play was going to be more important than sort of just rote learning. And so one of the things they did early on was they built a program to help teachers understand how to teach art. And from what I can tell, this was not really a commercially motivated idea. It wasn't just like, oh, that means we can sell more art
Yeah.
supplies. They had no problem selling art supplies. They were able to sell them to the federal government. They were able to sell them everywhere. Like, this was not a thing that they needed to create, but they felt really that this was an important part of education and how education was going to help the country. Which, like, honestly, the cynic in me has at this point has just been struggling. You know what I mean? For like, I was like, okay,
Oh,
these,
because you were looking for like the corporate angle on
of
all of
course,
this?
yeah. I mean,
Ah,
like, I was like, all right, where is it? The shoe's gonna drop. We're gonna find out that they're just like
yeah.
terrible human beings, and like this is awful. But everywhere I looked, it was sort of like another really good thing.
It's kind of cool too, as a neat reminder, hearing you talk about kind of like what the purpose of kindergarten is. In some ways, I feel like if I think about conversations about school now,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot, like we kind of take that for granted a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think now there's all this like, it almost feels like we're training our kids to be like data
Well, yeah,
factory workers. You know what I mean? Like it's like now they need to learn how to program computers by the time they're 8.
totally.
uh and like the things we're really focused on is like testing
Mm-hmm.
specific and like super STEM focused, and like, yeah, what about putting kids in, like you said, circles and
Right.
teaching them songs and letting them out into nature? Like all that stuff sounds so much more like, it's like, yeah, that is what I want, like our nation to, how I want
Yeah.
like the future of our nation to be you know nurtured.
We do talk about that. I mean, I think that's still what kindergarten looks like. I think
Mm,
what's missing is the conversation around why, like you said. Like,
mm,
I feel like it's
mhm.
become
Right,
childcare, which I don't want to
right.
underappreciate. Like, that's obviously a hugely important thing for other social movements
Yeah,
as well. But like, we don't talk about why childhood education is the way it is, and
yeah,
like, and I
and
do.
the value of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you're right though. The illness of transactionalism has kind of like driven its way down through college, through high school, through junior high, and
mm,
into elementary school, which
yeah,
is that the things you learn need to be applied to some future job, which is complete
right,
horseshit.
yeah, right. Yes.
Says the English and history major. So
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah, you and I are both
yeah,
beneficiaries of liberal arts education.
and look at
So
us, we're business owners now. You know what I mean?
look at
Like,
us. We're
yeah,
doing great.
pat on the back, pat on the back. Um, but yeah, so like, I don't know, like I was really kind of having a hard time kind of believing, and
Mm,
I went on my notes for this podcast were like, really trying to scare up some controversy. I just could
yeah.
not do it, like, um, I want to ask you, I'm going to ask you a question here, but, so amongst the early original colors of crayons, there was a color,
Mm.
a peach pink color called Flesh.
Oh.
Okay, so when do you think? So let's say they introduced that in like the 1910s. When do you think they actually changed the name of that color, realizing that might not be a great name for that color? When do you think? When do you think that was, like, year wise?
Uh, 98?
You would think, okay, so 98. Nope, 1962.
Whoa.
1962. They
Good for
of their,
them.
right, that's what I'm saying. Of their own volition,
Yeah.
they found
We're
out.
just like, this is not the skin tone of every single person.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't call it
Yeah,
that.
I mean, they also, I mean, again, kind of for a brand that was really connected to its consumer, they found out through teachers again that some kids were being teased when their skin color did not match
Yeah.
the color flesh
Of
that's in the
course.
box. And so they were like,
Yeah.
we have to change this. So they changed the name from Flesh to Peach in 1962.
Good for them.
Which is crazy. And I think there's a little bit of the Mandela effect going on here, because when I told my wife, who was a little bit younger than me, she's like, no, I remember the Flesh crayon. And I'm like, are you sure?
can't. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think you had a 40-year-old box of crayons,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
But do you remember it? In some ways, I almost remember it, but I'm like, that's not possible, because it was.
Yeah, that's why I put it in 90, because I was like, oh, I must have, it
Yeah.
seemed familiar.
Totally. Well, they did that in 62. In 2020, they teamed up with the former chief chemist of MAC Cosmetics and created a line called Colors of the World line, Colors of the World crayons. I have it right here. It's kind of amazing.
In 2020, you
In
said?
2020, they released this Colors of the World. And
I remember there being I definitely remember, I think they've done this before. Obviously not the matte, but like with different colors for different, flesh tones.
They went out to they set out to capture as many as they possibly could, using somebody who has experience in creating pigments for skins, skin types, and it's pretty awesome. They've got like the various colors on the side. So some of them are deepest almond. They basically play in the almond, rose, and golden colors. I'm somewhere between light almond, light rose, and light medium golden. Somewhere in there. That's where I am.
Where would I lean more?
I think you might be a little more light rose. I think you have a little more red in your.
Right now it looks that way, doesn't it?
I just, in general, I have a little more of the olive Mediterranean thing sometimes, especially my arm. But these are great. It's awesome. They did it. This was not, they weren't pushed into this by sort of like any activists. They decided that this is a thing that they wanted to make happen. It's just sort of like they're doing great stuff. I'm just really blown away by Crayola. It's like got me all in my feelings, So this year they're running a national campaign that is actually kind of targeted in local markets, where they seek to reunite adults with Crayola drawings that they did as kids in the 90s.
Wow.
So they'll like do billboards with like, is this you? And there'll be a drawing that they found maybe through a school or something like that. And people will call in and say, that was me. I was
wow.
Isn't that the best?
That's so good.
Oh my, it just makes me, I got a little like, ugh. I'm just getting like real choked up here.
Wow.
Yeah. And they've done it they do it in Dallas, Seattle, they're running it as a national campaign, but really hyper targeted. So they know that a person at a Dallas school created this thing, and like, Dallas PS42, like, is this you? So it's just awesome, so awesome.
Yeah.
So, we talked in our last episode about how brand strategy can guide kind of brand behavior or company behavior. And in the case of Boeing, how brand strategy can serve as kind of like a searing indictment of when a company is completely failing to live up to its own standards.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the case with Crayola, of course. I took a look at kind of their brand essence that they published on their site. So I'm just going to read most of it verbatim. And they kind of they started off with a kind of statement of purpose. And I just love this. At Crayola, our purpose is to help parents and educators raise creatively alive kids. I mean, the idea of creatively alive kids is such
a great
rich
phrase.
Like so
That's
rich.
So wonderful.
We want to help kids ask those what if questions that keep them curious. And so how do we do that? They have three things. They have a belief, they've got the tools that support that belief, and they've got the behaviors that they, as a company, follow. So let's start with the belief. First, we believe that we can help unleash the originality in every child. We believe that before a life can be filled with knowledge, wisdom, and accomplishment, it must be filled with wonder, adventure, and daydreams. Before children can learn to think for themselves, they must first be free to express what they're thinking. We believe in unleashing, nurturing, and celebrating the colorful originality in every child. Which is just amazing.
Yeah.
And this is actually...
it's a cool belief.
It's a really cool belief, yeah. And this is directly tied back to Rousseau, actually, which I just discovered, because Rousseau's point was that most educators, the goal of which is to get children to reason, try to use reason to educate children, which makes no sense. They don't have reason yet. So like Rousseau thought that was a fool's errand. And so this here, like the idea that before children can learn to think for themselves, they must be free to express what they're thinking is such a tie back to that, and such an interesting thought.
Yeah.
It's the best expression of, the best condensed notion of self-expression that I've heard. It's just so great.
Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, as you're talking about this, I feel like there's almost like a parallel evolution of like Sesame Street. I just see Sesame Street like marching right along with this in terms of like beliefs and how children, you know, what's good for them and how to, you know, help them and nurture them into becoming wonderful people. And I don't know, there's like it feels contemporaneous in some ways too.
Yeah, the outcome we're looking for is a good person. We're not looking for a good worker. We're not looking for a good leader. We're looking for a good person.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. All right.
That's very well put. That's in this. You know what I mean? Like and that kind of really emphasizes the thing that I feel like I don't hear as much in our conversation today.
Yeah.
Which is like, how do we make like rich people?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
successful people.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, Crayola's holding it up. They're holding that banner up, which I really appreciate. Okay, so that's their belief. So how do they turn that into what they create? So the tools that they offer. We offer tools that inspire kids to express what they're thinking. Straightforward, but this sentence just floored me. Crayola products give colorful wings to the invisible things that grow in the hearts and minds of children.
Oh, wow.
My God. I am like, I got the chills on that one.
Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful?
Uh-huh.
I just found that so gorgeously written and so well realized and so perfectly expressive of what this brand stands for.
Yeah.
It's rigorous strategy, but done in a way that completely sets the brand on the right path in terms of how it expresses itself, what it, you know, like, oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah.
We offer colors that inspire and tools that transform original thoughts into visible form. So this notion of like this invisible world that then becomes real is just so beautiful. In some ways it's related to Lego, I think, as well. Like Lego kind of has that same notion. Okay, so that was that sort of tools that they offer, the beliefs that they hold, and then the behavior that they exhibit as a brand. We create products that will help kids free their what if questions. For us to create products that will help kids free their what if questions, Crayolians need to be kid inspired. As Crayolians, we ask, what would a kid do? If we think like kids, we'll create products and programs that will appeal to kids. Why? Because creatively alive kids blossom and grow to be inspired, original adults who in turn have the ability to inspire the world. I mean, what would a kid do? It sounds trite, but coming after that, like establishing this idea that they're invisible things growing the hearts and minds of children, and we want to act like that, I think is such a strong, amazing statement to put down in terms of how do we act as a brand. So Topher, I'm here at the end of this journey, and I'm coming back to Rousseau, to this idea of state of nature. And Rousseau thought a lot about like, what is the state of nature of a human being? Can a human being be inherently good? And like here I'm asking, like, can a company be inherently good? Like, can this brand be inherently good?
Right.
I mean, listen, it's late stage capitalism, so that's a real tall order, but I don't know.
Are they publicly traded?
I don't know. Let me do a quick search on that.
Because I feel like that in and of itself would be, once you get shareholders involved.
Yeah. Okay. It is publicly traded. It's
Wow.
symbol is BYS.
BYS.
Yeah, it's from the original name, Binney and Smith.
Oh.
But I mean, that's pretty impressive to your point that they can be a publicly traded company and still have some kind of ethical soul.
That does make me feel better. And then it also makes me feel like, well, why is everybody else being such a jerk then?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, listen, I don't. There may be specters out there that I did not scare up. There may be.
I mean, yeah, we're not here to say that like nothing wrong has ever been done or anything like that. But what a different place to be in.
Yeah, totally. It was a great, fun journey. I really appreciate you bringing this one up. I hope our listeners enjoyed the journey we took them on.
I absolutely did enjoy it. And now it's got me curious about where we'll be going next.
Well, there's no connection here. This is just kind of, this is like endorphin-y. This is just from the guts. This comes from the soul. And it just hit me out of the blue. It was not connected to anything, but I just got my pulse racing. I was like, that seems like it's going to be fun. So the brand I want you to look into is a brand that you and I will probably never have any direct relationship to whatsoever. Because it is the purview of the very, very privileged. But we kind of all live in relationship to it on some sort of level. And that brand is Ferrari. Just a little thrill ride. You know what I mean? I just think a little thrill ride could be fun.
Yeah. And I'm not much of a car guy.
I know you're not a car guy.
So,
but there's so many things there.
Yeah, I will ruin this.
I don't think you're going to ruin it.
In a fun way.
Yeah.
I think, it's not going to be a gearhead episode.
I'm psyched about that. I don't want a gearhead episode. There's so many cool things about Ferrari.
I love the horsey.
I love the horse.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be good. You're going to catch you out of your, a little bit of a stretch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm on it.
Sweet.
Yeah. I'm already thinking of things.
The engine is warming up. That's what I'm saying. Key is in ignition. A deep growl.
Yeah.
And we're just idling in the driveway now. We're ready to peel off and just go on a journey. This is gonna be great.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope our listeners are looking forward to it as well. In the meantime, I can remind those listeners, you all at home, that you've been listening to Strange Coordinates. This is the show where we use brands as roadmaps to arrive at surprising and fascinating places.
Oh, pun alert, roadmap. Next time.
Oh, yeah. And your hosts are me, Topher Burns, and Robert Baylog, the guy who just brought you all this mini-hued wonder of the Crayola brand. To learn more about our H&C Territorial, go to our website, weareterritorial.com. Join our mailing list. We have emails that go out that are regularly as delightful as a box of crayons. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, let's do that. So thanks so much, everybody. We will be at your earballs next time. Talk to you soon.
Bye. I remember that, when you got the deluxe, the kids who had the deluxe box,
the 64 with the pencil sharpener or the sharpener.
I remember as a kid being like, they could try harder on these names, because I remember early on, at least for me, there was a lot of red orange and orange red, and they had blue green and green blue. And I guess now that's like a nice little grammar lesson, actually, which is this like, this is a
Dependencies.
reddy orange rather than like an orangey red.
Yeah.
But I think that like the orange, I don't know. It like,
I think they were
I remember just
steer
being like,
clear of-
these are just, the names are not as descriptive as they could be.
I love like 8-year-old dissatisfied Topher, just like, you know, excoriating them for their intellectual laziness.
Yeah. I was like, I can name these
Yeah.
better. This is sunburst orange. Like I can remember very clearly
Yeah.
being like, this is you're lying down on the job.